Imagine raising your daughter for 50 years and finding out in a single phone call that she'd sold her house and car. But what she didn't know was that I was keeping a secret left by my husband before he died. It wasn't me who was about to lose everything, but my daughter. I went from victim to being in charge of my own life. I'll tell you all the details.
I was sitting in the waiting room at the clinic when my cell phone rang. It was Veronica, my only daughter. Her voice sounded strange, almost icy, when she said, "Mom, we're leaving for Asia tomorrow. I've already sold your country house and your car. We needed the money. Goodbye," and suddenly hung up, without any other explanation. For 52 years old I raised her, I gave up so much for her, and yet she discarded me as if I had no value. But I took a deep breath and smiled, because there was something my dear daughter didn't know. My name is Daisy. I have 73 years old and, until that moment, I believed I knew my daughter well. I had lost my husband only half a year earlier. Henry, my partner, suddenly died of a heart attack while we were having breakfast together, as we did every morning during 47 years old. That day, he served me coffee with milk and toast. As always, he kissed me on the forehead and said, "Good morning, my dear." Those were her last words. From then on, Veronica was closer to my routine. Or at least, that's what I imagined. She came to see me 3 times a week. She helped me with the funeral arrangements, accompanied me to the grocery store, and even suggested I see a doctor for routine checkups. "Mom, now that you're alone, you need to take better care of yourself," she said with a smile I thought was affectionate. But now I realize it was just a matter of convenience. The country house had been our refuge for decades. Enrique and I bought it when Veronica was 16 years old, with a lot of effort and sacrifice. We spent every summer there, creating memories, celebrating birthdays and Christmases. Veronica took colleagues, then her fiancé, Mauricio. I cooked for everyone, cleaned, and did the laundry. It was our family tradition. I never imagined she would only see that home as a source of money, and the car. That old one past Enrique cared for it as if it were an heir. He washed it every Sunday, changed the oil diligently, and always parked it in the same corner under a tree. Veronica knew what that car meant to me. It was the last remaining link to him. Enrique's perfume still permeated the seats. When she hung up the phone, I remained seated in that uncomfortable blue plastic chair, surrounded by other patients. And for the first time in months, I didn't cry. Something different arose within me. A serenity I hadn't felt since Enrique's death, because in that moment I remembered something I had completely forgotten. 3 days before leaving, Enrique handed me an envelope. "Margarita, keep this in your drawer. If something happens to me, open it only when you're ready." I had put it away without paying attention. After the funeral, with the grief and so many obligations, I simply forgot about it. But it was still there, waiting for me at home. The nurse called me into the examination room. The doctor assessed me and said I was doing well for my age, that I just needed more rest and better nutrition. I nodded and smiled, but my thoughts were elsewhere. I thought about that envelope, the coldness in Veronica's voice, how Mauricio probably had a hand in everything. He never liked me, always saw me as a nuisance, I left the clinic and walked slowly to the bus stop. I no longer owned a car, according to Veronica. As I waited, I couldn't help but smile slightly. There was something ironic about it. My daughter believed she had left me with nothing, but what she didn't know was that Enrique, my dear Enrique, had always been a cautious man. The bus arrived, and I settled in by the window. I watched the city glide by before me, houses, shops, people rushing back and forth, each with their own pain, their own secrets. I, too, harbored my own, and was about to reveal them. When I reached my house, I went straight to my bedroom, opened the dresser drawer, and there was the envelope, exactly where I'd left it. My hands trembled slightly as I held it. I could sense there was more than one document inside. Enrique had written my name in his neat handwriting on the front. I sat down on the bed we'd shared for so many years and took a deep breath. Outside, night was beginning to fall, filling the house with familiar shadows that no longer frightened me. I opened the envelope slowly, as if I were unwrapping a birthday present. What I found inside would change everything. What I saw inside that envelope took my breath away. There were deeds, bank receipts, and a handwritten letter from Enrique. My eyes welled up as I recognized his familiar handwriting. My dear Margarita, if you're reading this, it's because I'm no longer with you. Forgive me for not revealing everything while I was still alive, but I wanted to spare you unnecessary worries. Over the years, I've invested our savings in real estate and businesses. We don't just own the country house, we have 6 other properties, including the building where Veronica lives with Mauricio. We also have shares in 3 highly valuable companies. You're rich, my love. You always have been, but now it's written down. I wanted to ensure that, even without me, you were protected. My hands trembled as I scanned the documents. There were titles to houses in different neighborhoods, an apartment downtown, a small inn on the coast, and, indeed, the 20-story building where my daughter lived. Enrique had been the discreet owner for a decade, but he had put everything in the name of a company unknown to me. According to the papers, I was the sole heir. There were also account statements I never imagined existed. The numbers seemed unreal. Enrique worked as a truck driver for 40 years, but at the same time, he had been a brilliant investor. Every penny saved, every sacrifice we made, he secretly multiplied. In the letter, he explained that he kept everything hidden because he didn't want me to worry about money and, most importantly, he didn't want Veronica to know his true financial situation. You know our daughter, Margarita. If she knew about the fortune, her behavior would change. I always wanted her to love us for who we are, not for what we have. How ironic. Our daughter had rejected me because she believed I had nothing, when in fact, we had everything. That night, I couldn't sleep a wink. I walked around the house, touching the antique furniture and the ornaments Veronica always thought were outdated. I stopped in front of the family photos on the wall, especially one in which she was 5 years old, laughing in Enrique's arms. Where had that sweet child, who had now become so cold and calculating, hidden? The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Veronica again. Her voice sounded different, softer, but I had learned to be wary of such changes in tone. Mom, how are you? I wanted to let you know that we've already transferred the money from the sale of the house and car. We've deposited your share into your account. It's not much, but it'll last for a few months until you can get something smaller. My share? I asked calmly. Yes, Mom. We weren't going to leave you with nothing. You kept 30%. Fair enough, right? We needed the money for an investment in Asia. Mauricio has an incredible opportunity there, 30% of my own stuff. How generous, I understand, daughter. And when are you traveling? This afternoon. We've already packed our bags. We'll be gone for at least 6 months, maybe more if the deal goes well. But don't worry, Mom. When we get back, we'll help you find a small apartment that better suits your needs. My needs.as if she knew what they were. Okay, Veronica. Have a good trip. Oh, Mom, I knew you would understand. You've always been so understanding. We love you so much. And he hung up. I stood there, phone still in hand, and for the first time since Enrique's death, I laughed. I laughed like I hadn't in months. The situation was so absurd it was comical. My daughter had robbed me, thrown me out of my own home, treated me with unbearable condescension. And all this to fund an adventure that would likely be a fiasco. But what hurt most wasn't the money, it was the ease with which she discarded me. Years of dedication to her, full of sacrifice and unconditional love, reduced to a 2-minute phone call. I checked my bank account online. Indeed, they had deposited an amount that seemed generous to them, but to me it was a joke. They had sold the country house for much less than it was worth, probably because they needed cash quickly. And Enrique's car, they simply liquidated, that afternoon. Through the window, I saw Veronica and Mauricio loading suitcases into a taxi. He carried 2 enormous ones, she displayed an expensive duffel bag. They laughed, kissed, and talked about plans. They looked like 2 teenagers eager for an adventure. They didn't look back, they didn't say goodbye. When the taxi left, I sat in the kitchen with a cup of tea and spread Enrique's documents on the table. I needed to decide. I could hire a lawyer, demand back what was mine, sue them for fraud. But something told me there was a better way to handle this, a more informative one. I remembered Jonas, the lawyer who had handled Enrique's affairs. He attended the funeral, offered his condolences, and said I could reach out to him if I needed anything. Well, now I did. Dona Margarita, what a joy to hear your voice. How have you been? He said when he answered. Well, Jonas, I need to talk to you urgently. I found some documents belonging to Enrique that I don't quite understand. Of course, you can come to my office tomorrow morning. I'll be at your disposal. That night, I slept soundly for the first time in months. I dreamed of Enrique. He was sitting in his favorite armchair, reading the newspaper, as he did every morning. When he saw me, he smiled and said, "It's about time, my love. It's about time you stood up for yourself." I woke with a different feeling. It wasn't happiness, but it wasn't the sadness that had consumed me for so long either. It was something closer to determination. For the first time since his death, I had a clear goal. I would get back what was mine, but not in the way Veronica had hoped. The next morning, I dressed more carefully than usual. I put on my burgundy dress, the one Enrique always said enhanced my elegance. I combed my hair, put on a little makeup, and when I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman I hadn't recognized in a long time. I saw a strong woman. Jonas's office was downtown, in an old but refined building with marble floors and large windows that let in plenty of light. Jonas greeted me with a warm smile, but when I showed him the papers, his expression changed. Dona Margarita, this is much more than I imagined. Enrique was an incredibly shrewd man. Look, according to these documents, you own, I know, Jonas, I interrupted. I've already checked everything. What I want to know is what I can do legally. Jonas explained that everything was in order, that the papers looked legitimate, that I was, in fact, the rightful owner of all those properties. He also confirmed something I already suspected. The sale of the country house was illegal, because Veronica had no legal authority to sell it. We can reverse the sale immediately, Mrs. Margarita, he said. And there's also the possibility of taking legal action against your daughter for fraud. No, Jonas, I replied firmly. I want it to be different. I want it all to be kept secret for now. Can you help me? He looked at me curiously, but nodded, of course. You're my client. I need you to discreetly reclaim the country house, to do whatever is necessary to nullify that fraudulent sale. And I need you to help me take effective control of all my properties, especially the building where Veronica lives. Understood? It will be a process that will take a few weeks, but it is perfectly feasible. Perfect. And Jonas, I added, I need no one to know that I'm behind all of this. At least for now. When I left Jonas's office, I felt as if I had awakened from a long dream. I walked the downtown streets, observing everyday life, the people, the buildings, the businesses going about their business as usual. But for me, everything had changed. I had a plan. The weeks that followed were the strangest of my existence. Formally, I was a widow everyone assumed was destitute, abandoned by her daughter. Secretly, I was a wealthy woman quietly plotting to recover her fortune. Jonas worked efficiently. Every few days he called me to update me on the progress of the legal proceedings. I decided to stay in my house for now. After all, it was mine. Although I knew Veronica was probably hoping to see me move into a furnished room. Or something smaller, so she could manage my things more easily. Every morning I woke up, drank coffee at the old table where Enrique and I had shared the silence of so many years, and then went for a walk around the neighborhood. My neighbors greeted me with that mix of compassion and curiosity reserved for widows who appear fragile. One afternoon, Clara, my neighbor of many years, came over while I was watering the plants in front of the house. Margarita, my dear, she said, is it true that Veronica went to Asia and left you alone? Yes, Clara. She went with Mauricio. They say she has a business project there. And how will you live, my daughter? Everyone around here thinks Enrique didn't leave much money behind. If only I knew, I thought. Don't worry, Clara, I replied calmly. I'll be fine. If you need anything, I can bring you some food, help you with the shopping, she offered kindly. You're very kind, he said, but I'm really fine. Clara looked at me with that familiar look. It was the same one I'd received right after the wake, full of pity mixed with a quiet relief that it wasn't theirs. Well, you know where to find me. Those conversations were repeated frequently. The butcher, the baker on the corner, the woman at the grocery store, all with the delicate tone of someone caring for a wounded soul. I returned a smile, thanking them for their concern, but inside, something reveled in that simulation. It was like living in two worlds. Jonas called me on a Wednesday morning. Donna Margarita, I have good news. I managed to reverse the sale of the country house. The buyers didn't know it was a fraudulent transaction, so they received their money back without any problems. The house is now yours again. Excellent, Jonas. And the building where Veronica lives, that's more complicated. Technically, the company has always owned it, but we need to make administrative adjustments so that you have direct control. This should take another 2 weeks. Perfect. Keep me posted. I hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen with my coffee, thinking about Veronica. She'd been away for 3 weeks, and there was no news, no calls. No messages, not even a postcard. To her, I must have ceased to exist as soon as she got the money she needed. But I knew that would change soon. I decided to visit the country house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Enrique and I had taken countless times. The house was as I remembered, small, painted beige, with a terrace overlooking the sea. The new buyers had added a few potted flowers, but otherwise everything remained the same. I sat on the sidewalk in front and stayed there for an hour. I remembered the summers when Veronica was a girl, playing in the sand, building castles. Enrique would grill fish while I tossed salads in the kitchen. Later, she would bring friends. Then boyfriends, then Mauricio. All those happy moments, reduced by her to a simple cash transaction. An elderly gentleman came out of the house and noticed me sitting there. He approached me gently. Is everything okay, ma'am? Yes, thank you. Just reminiscing about old times. Did you know the former owners? Yes. I knew it very well. It's a shame what happened. They said the owner was seriously ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a good opportunity, but now we'd discovered the sale wasn't valid. We had to return the house. Did you ever meet her in person? I asked. No. We did everything through third parties. They told us that the daughter resolved everything because the mother was incapable. What a sad situation. If you only knew how sad it really was, I thought. Well, I'm glad they got the money back. Yes, at least that's resolved. But we loved this house so much, we'll miss it. I left with a heavy heart. It wasn't just the money that hurt, but the ease with which Veronica had lied about me. She had fabricated an illness, using my supposed fragility to justify her actions. To her, I wasn't a person, but an obstacle to be removed. That night, I called Jonas again. Jonas, I need your help with another matter. I want Enrique's car back. That will be more difficult, Mrs. Margarita. The vehicle was registered in your daughter's name, and apparently, she had power of attorney authorizing her to sell it. Like this? Apparently, you signed this power of attorney a few months ago. shortly after your husband's death. Don't you remember? At that moment, I understood. It was the moment Veronica began planning everything. I vaguely remembered signing the papers she brought me, saying they were only to facilitate the funeral arrangements. I was so overwhelmed with grief that I signed them without reading them. How naive I was, I understand, Jonas. Is there any way to get the car back? We can try, but it will be more complicated. We would have to prove that you signed by mistake or under duress. Let's do this. I want back everything they took from me. The following weeks became an unusual routine. In the mornings, I was the poor widow everyone knew. I went shopping, chatted with neighbors, and maintained an appearance of fragility. In the afternoons, I transformed into someone else, the businesswoman who reviewed Enrique's documents, spoke with Jonas, and planned her next move. I learned things about finance that I never thought I'd need. I discovered that Enrique had been much more astute than I'd imagined. Every investment had been carefully calculated. The building where Veronica lived, for example, was not only profitable in terms of rental income but also located in a rapidly appreciating area. Jonas, in one of our conversations, revealed something that left me speechless. Mauricio, he was in debt. Heavily so. He had taken out several loans, using the apartment where they lived as collateral, never even realizing he'd never actually owned it. If the banks found out, he'd be in serious trouble. A few days later, Jonas called again. Mrs. Margarita, we've already sorted out all the formalities. You now have direct control over all the properties. And what's more, I managed to get Enrique's car back. The buyer was an acquaintance of mine. I explained the situation, and he agreed to return it for a small compensation. Excellent work, Jonas. Now I need one more thing. What would it be? I want you to send a letter to my daughter. What kind of letter? An eviction notice. There was silence on the other end of the line. Dona Margarita. Are you sure you want this? After all, she's your daughter, Jonas. My daughter kicked me out of my own home with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my belongings without consulting me. She treated me as if I were disposable. Now she'll learn that every action has consequences. He took a deep breath. I see. I just wanted to make sure you've thought through all the implications. I've already considered them, Jonas. All of them. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept imagining Veronica's face when she read the notification. First, confusion, then disbelief, then panic. She'd probably think it was a mistake, that someone was trying to trick her. But when she checked, she'd discover it was all legal. The next morning, as if expecting my call, the phone rang at 8 o'clock sharp. It was Veronica. Her voice was filled with desperation. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, daughter. How was Asia? I asked, feigning calm. Mom, I don't have time for this right now. I got an absurd letter yesterday. It says I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. This has to be a mistake. Do you know anything about this, an eviction notice? How strange. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. Let me see here. It's called Enrique Participacos S.A. Have you ever heard that name? Enrique had used his own name for the company. What poetic irony. No, daughter, I've never heard of it. Are you sure the letter is real? That's what I want to find out. Mom, I need your help. Ricardo left me in Asia, ran off with another woman. And now I come back here and find this. I don't know what to do. There it was, confirmation. Mauricio had abandoned her, probably when the money ran out or when he realized legal trouble was inevitable. Poor Veronica, she had sacrificed her family for a worthless man. I'm sorry, daughter. Where are you now? At the apartment, but I don't know for how long. Mom, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. I don't have anyone else. The irony was perfect. Now that she had lost the man she had left me for, she remembered she had a mother, of course, daughter. Come whenever you want, I'm going now. I hung up the phone and looked in the mirror. I needed to look perfect for this performance. I put on my most understated gray dress, tied my hair in a simple bun, and practiced the expression of a worried but resigned mother. An hour later, Veronica knocked on the door. I was surprised to see how haggard she looked. She had lost weight, dark circles darkened her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and unkempt. Her eyes were red from crying. Mom, she said, as if she were going to hug me, but stopped mid-gesture, remembering how we had parted. Come in, daughter. Would you like some coffee? Yes, please. We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where weeks before I had read Enrique's documents. Veronica seemed smaller in that chair, like a lost child about to confess something. Mom, I know I acted very badly towards you. I know I treated you horribly. Is everything okay, daughter? I asked softly. No, it's not. I don't have anyone else. She lowered her head and cried. What happened to Mauricio? I asked. He left me, Mom. He ran off with a hotel waitress in Paris, a girl in her early 20s. I found out there was never any deal in Asia. It was all a lie. He just wanted to escape his debts and used the money from the sale of his house to fund his adventure, all the debts. I insisted, yes, a lot of debt. I discovered he'd been taking out loans for years, some even using the apartment as collateral, without me knowing it wasn't even really ours. There was the missing piece. Mauricio had dug his own hole and, like a rat, had escaped. And the banks? I asked. Now they're after me, Mom. Since we were married, they say I'm responsible for everything. And then there's this eviction notice. I don't know what to do. I have no money, no job, no place to live. She was sobbing genuinely, tears of genuine despair. For a moment, my mother's heart almost gave out. I wanted to hug her, comfort her, tell her everything would be okay. But then I remembered her coldness when she called me from the office, the way she treated me as if I were nothing more than a burden. Have you consulted a lawyer about this letter? I asked. I can't afford a lawyer, Mom. What little was left, Mauricio took when he ran away with her. And what do you intend to do? I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay with you for a while. Just until I can get a job and find a small place to live. That's what I was hoping to hear. After kicking me out of my house, selling my things, treating me like trash, now she wanted me to take her in. Of course, daughter. This will always be your home. She looked at me in surprise, as if she couldn't believe how easy the answer was. Really, Mom? After everything I've done, you are my daughter, Veronica. That doesn't change. This time, she hugged me. But it wasn't a loving hug, it was the desperate embrace of someone clinging to the last plank before sinking. I hugged her back, but not with the same tenderness as before. There was calculation in my gesture. Strategy. Thank you, Mom. I promise I'll get a job soon. I won't be a burden to you. Don't worry now. Rest, recover. Then we'll look at our options. That afternoon, Veronica went to the apartment to get some clothes. I stayed in the kitchen, reflecting on how everything was going exactly as planned. She'd come back to me broken, vulnerable, with no other options. And the best part was, she didn't suspect a thing. That night, I called Jonas again. Jonas, I need you to do one more thing for me. Tell me, Mrs. Margarita, I want you to investigate all of Mauricio's debts. I need to know exactly how much he owes, to whom, and what legal options there are to get my daughter out of this mess. It will take some time, but it is possible, he replied. Perfect. And Jonas, remember, absolute confidentiality. No one can know I'm behind this investigation, understood? But may I ask what your ultimate plan is? It's simple, Jonas. I'll save my daughter. But first, she needs to understand what it means to hit rock bottom. I hung up the phone and poured a glass of wine Henry saved for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd seen a reason to toast. The game had begun, and for the first time in months, I held all the good cards. The next day, Veronica moved into my house. She brought only 2 suitcases and a box, all that remained from her previous life. I watched her unpack in the room where she had slept in her youth, and I could see the humiliation in every gesture. She had gone from a luxurious apartment to the simple bedroom of her adolescence. Mom, I found this in the apartment, he said, showing an envelope. It was among Mauricio's things. It has your name written on it. My heart raced, but I kept my composure. My name? How strange. Indeed, it was Enrique's handwriting, but different from the envelope I had opened weeks earlier. This one was smaller, more recent. Maybe Mauricio found it among Dad's things when he passed away and forgot to give it to him, suggested Veronica. Maybe. Can I see? I opened it carefully. Inside was a short letter and a small key. Margarita, if you're reading this after the main envelope, it means our daughter is in trouble. This key opens a safe deposit box at the Central Bank, Downtown Branch, number 42. Inside is something that can help you, but use it wisely. With eternal love, Enrique. Veronica read over my shoulder, her eyes shining. A safe? Did Dad have a safe? I didn't know. Not a you, he says. Do you think we should see what's in there? I don't know, daughter. Maybe it's better to leave it as it is, but, Mom, there might be something important. Maybe documents, maybe something valuable that could help us. Her desperation was palpable. She clung to any hope of escaping the abyss she found herself in. "Okay," he said, after a measured pause. "We can go tomorrow." The next morning, we went to the bank together. Veronica was anxious, almost trembling. I, on the other hand, continued to play the naive widow, who knew little about finance. The manager checked my ID and led us to the safe deposit boxes. With the key, he opened the number .42. Inside was a black velvet case and several carefully arranged packages. I removed them cautiously. They were jewelry. Lots of jewelry. Rings, necklaces, bracelets, earrings. Some I recognized, they belonged to Enrique's family, kept for generations. Others were pieces I'd never seen before. Enclosed was a letter explaining the origin of each piece and its approximate value. Veronica brought her hand to her mouth, panting, "Mom. All this must be worth a fortune, you think so?" I asked calmly, "Look at this emerald necklace, this diamond bracelet. And this set of pearls. Father has hidden a treasure here." According to the letter, the pieces together totaled over $1 million. A considerable sum, but nothing compared to the rest of the hidden fortune I already knew about. To me, it was like finding coins under the sofa. "What are we going to do with all this, Mom?" she asked, her eyes shining. "They're family keepsakes. Maybe we should keep them, but, Mom, we could sell some. You could get your country house back, and I could pay off some of Mauricio's debts." There it was again. Even when faced with something so precious, his first reaction was to think of using it to fill the gaps Mauricio had left. He hadn't learned anything yet. "Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance to cover debts that weren't yours?" I asked. "What other choice do I have? If I don't pay, the banks will pressure me. They might even seize my properties, even if, in the end, nothing is in my name. Think carefully, daughter. Once sold, these jewels cannot be returned, I know. But I have no way out." We took the treasure home. Veronica spread the pieces out on the kitchen table, evaluating them one by one, as if they were just figures on a balance sheet. It was painful for me to watch her reduce decades of family history to numbers scribbled in a notebook. "Mom," she said, counting imaginary bills in her head, "I think this will help us resolve the most pressing debts. Not all of them, but at least the ones that could have immediate consequences." She spoke with the conviction of someone trying to take life into her own hands, but I knew she still had a long way to go before she could grasp the true weight of her choices. That afternoon, I received a call from Jonas. "Dona Margarita, I already have a complete report on Mauricio's debts. The situation is worse than I imagined." "How much worse?" I asked. "He owes over $1 million to various banks and still has debts with private creditors. The most serious issue is that he used forged documents with his daughter's signature on some of these contracts. This means that, legally, Veronica is responsible. Is there any way to get her out of this? If we can prove she had no knowledge, perhaps. But it will be a long and expensive process." "How expensive?" "A good specialized lawyer would charge around $250,000. And even then, there's no guarantee of success." "I see. What if the debts are simply paid? It would be the quickest solution, but I doubt your daughter has the means to do so. I took a deep breath. Jonas, prepare all the necessary documents to exempt her from these debts. But don't tell her anything for now. There was a pause on the other side. Do you intend to pay? I will do whatever it takes to protect my daughter. But it must be done in a very specific way. When I hung up, I found Veronica in the living room, staring at the jewelry with a blank expression. She looked like a child who had broken her favorite toy and didn't know how to fix it. What are you thinking, daughter? I asked. About Dad. About how disappointed he would be in me. I destroyed everything he built. Your father loved you very much, Veronica. He would understand. No, Mom. He taught me to be responsible, to value family, to not be selfish. And I did the opposite. I abandoned you for a lying man. I sold our family memories for money. I ruined everything. It was the first time since his return that I had heard true repentance. It wasn't just regret for the consequences, but moral awareness of what he had done. People make mistakes, daughter. The important thing is to learn from them. But how do I fix it, Mom? How do I erase the damage I caused? That was the question I'd been waiting for. Veronica was finally ready to face the truth about her choices. But it wasn't time to show my final cards yet. In the following days, Veronica decided to sell most of her jewelry, keeping only the engagement ring Enrique had given me and a small necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. I watched her prepare to visit jewelry stores, research prices, and negotiate with buyers. It was painful to watch her reduce decades of family history to simple business transactions, but it was necessary. Mom, I made some money from the jewelry, she said one afternoon, counting the bills on the kitchen table. It's less than I thought, but enough to pay off the most pressing debts. Are you sure you want to do this? I asked. I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they can seize everything. Even this house could be at risk if they prove any legal connection to the properties. The irony pierced me. Veronica, worried about losing a house that was mine, was paying off debts owed to a man who had abandoned her with money from the jewelry that Enrique, the same man who had created the fortune that could have saved her, had hidden away. And how did you decide which debts to pay off first? I asked. I spoke with a financial advisor at the bank. She said to prioritize those with real guarantees, as they are the ones that can generate immediate seizure. I noticed a change in her. The woman who had sold my things without hesitation now carefully considered every step. Her suffering had made her more cautious, more mature, though still fragile. That night, as I was organizing debt papers on my desk, I received another call from Jonas. Mrs. Margarita, we have located Mauricio. Where is he? I asked. In Paris, as your daughter suspected. But the interesting thing is that he's trying to obtain residency through a sham marriage with that young woman mentioned. Furthermore, we have evidence that he intentionally falsified your daughter's documents. With this, we can legally exempt her from all debts. A quiet relief coursed through me. I held the key to freeing her from everything, and yet she had no idea. Start the process immediately, Jonas. But don't tell Veronica until it's complete. I don't want to give her false hope, understood? It will take a few weeks. Perfect. I hung up and saw Veronica looking at me from the living room, curiously. Who was it, Mother? A lady looking for her neighbor Clara. Wrong call, I lied effortlessly. With each passing day, I became more accustomed to the double life. To Veronica, I was the poor, abandoned mother. In secret, I was the rich woman silently plotting her redemption. The next 2 weeks were a cruel learning experience for Veronica. I watched my daughter, who had lived in comfort for decades, face choices she'd never imagined: how to stretch her food money, how to negotiate with creditors, how to endure the shame of seeking employment with a bad credit rating. "Mom, I had 3 interviews today," she said one afternoon, coming home exhausted, her feet swollen, and her face drawn. "2 times they said they couldn't hire me because of the lawsuits. The third time, they offered me a part-time job as a night office cleaner. Will you accept?" I asked. "I have no choice. The pay is low, but it's better than nothing. This way I can keep looking for something better during the day." My heart sank. My daughter, who once boasted of her comfortable life, was now preparing to clean other people's floors at night. It hurt, but at the same time, I felt proud. Finally, she was facing reality without waiting for someone else to solve everything for her. "Are you sure you can handle so much physical exertion?" I asked. "I'll have to learn. I've already weighed too heavily on you, Mom. Just letting me live here is already too much. This has always been your home, Veronica." "No, Mom. It's yours. I'm here because of your generosity. But I won't abuse it forever." That night, while Veronica was leaving for her first cleaning shift, my neighbor Elsa came to visit. She sat with me in the kitchen, drank tea, and looked at the old photos on the wall. "Daisy, can I tell you something?" he began. "When your daughter left, many thought you would never forgive her. But look. She came back, broken, and you opened the doors again. She is my daughter, Elsa, yes, but not every mother would do what you are doing, after being treated like you were." I smiled silently. If Elsa knew the truth, that I could solve all of Veronica's problems with a phone call, but chose to let her learn through pain, she would understand that it wasn't just forgiveness. It was a lesson. On Wednesday morning, the phone rang. It was Jonas. "Donna Margarita, I have exciting news. I managed to reverse the sale of the country house. The buyers were unaware that the transaction was fraudulent, so they received their money back without any resistance. The house is yours again." "Excellent, Jonas. What about the building where Veronica lives? This case is more complex. Technically, the documents have always been in the name of the company created by Enrique, but we're adjusting the management so that you can assume direct control. It should take 2 weeks." Perfect. Keep me updated." After hanging up, I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee. Veronica had only been in Europe for 3 weeks, but since then she hadn't called me, sent me messages, or even sent me a card. To her, I had ceased to exist the moment she got the money. But I knew that would change soon. I decided to visit the country house. I took the bus to the coast, the same route Enrique and I had taken so many times. The house remained the same, small, painted light yellow, with a terrace facing the sea. The previous occupants had added potted plants, but otherwise, everything was the same. I sat on the sidewalk in front and watched for almost an hour. Memories came back like waves. The summers when Veronica was a girl, building sandcastles, Enrique grilling fish, me making salads in the kitchen. Then came her friends, boyfriends, even Mauricio. All those memories, reduced by my daughter to a hurried negotiation. An elderly gentleman came out of the house and noticed me standing there. He approached me curiously. "Are you okay, ma'am?" "Yes, thank you. I'm just remembering. Did you know the previous owners?" "I knew it very well. What a shame about what happened." "We were told you were very ill and needed to sell quickly. We thought it was a good opportunity, but now we've learned the sale wasn't legal. We had to return the house. Did they do it all through someone?" I asked. "Yes, an intermediary. We were told that the daughter resolved everything because the mother was incapable." Sad situation. He smiled bitterly. If only they knew how sad it really was. Well, at least they got their money back. Yes, fortunately. But we're sorry. We really liked this place. I left with a heavy heart. What hurt most wasn't just Veronica's lie, but the fact that she'd used my supposed fragility as an excuse to get rid of me. That night, I called Jonas again. "Jonas, I need your help with one more matter. I want Enrique's car back." He took a deep breath before answering. "That will be more difficult, Mrs. Margarita. The car was in your daughter's name, and she had power of attorney authorizing her to sell it." "Power of attorney?" I asked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "From what I saw in the records, you signed this document a few months ago, shortly after your husband's death. Don't you remember?" I was silent for a few seconds. The memory came to me in flashes. Veronica bringing me papers to sign, saying they were just to simplify the funeral and inheritance arrangements. I was fragile, immersed in grief, and I signed without question. Naive, so that's where it all started. I murmured, "Exactly." From that moment on, she was already planning the sale. "Is there any way to get the car back?" "We can try, but it's more complicated. We'd have to prove that you signed the contract in error, without full awareness, perhaps even under emotional duress." "Do whatever it takes, Jonas. I want back everything that was mine." Over the next few days, I adopted a dual routine. In the morning, I was the modest widow everyone knew. I shopped, greeted neighbors, and kept up appearances. In the afternoon, I transformed into a silent administrator. I studied Enrique's documents, chatted with Jonas, and plotted my next steps. I discovered sides of my husband I'd never imagined. Every investment had been carefully calculated, every property acquired with a vision for the future. The building where Veronica lived, for example, not only generated rent, but was located in an area experiencing rapid appreciation. She also learned that Mauricio had accumulated enormous debts, far greater than Veronica could have imagined. Worse still, he had used the apartment as collateral for loans he wasn't even entitled to take out. If the banks found out, his ruin would be inevitable, and that would just be the end of the thread I would pull. A few weeks later, Jonas called me in an excited voice. "Mrs. Margarita, I have great news. We've completed all the formalities. Now you have full control over the properties. And I've also managed to recover Enrique's car, really? I asked, surprised. Yes. The buyer turned out to be an acquaintance of mine. When I explained the situation, he agreed to return the vehicle in exchange for a small compensation. I smiled, feeling a pang of emotion. That machine wasn't just metal and wheels, it was the last living memory of the Sundays Enrique would patiently wash it. Excellent work, Jonas. But now I need you to do one more thing. What would it be? I want you to send an eviction notice to my daughter. There was silence on the other end of the line. Donna Margarita. Are you sure? She's your daughter, I do. Veronica kicked me out of my house with a 2-minute phone call. She sold my things without asking me. She treated me like trash. Now you'll learn that every action has consequences. I understand. I just wanted to confirm that you've thought it through. I thought about it. I want it to be done legally and discreetly, okay? I'll take care of it. That night, I lay awake. I kept imagining Veronica's face upon receiving the letter, first confusion, then disbelief, and finally panic. She would probably think it was a mistake, that someone was deceiving her. But upon investigation, she would discover that everything was perfectly in order. Revenge wasn't my goal. What I wanted was justice, and maybe a lesson. The next morning, as if I'd sensed it, the phone rang early. I answered. It was Veronica, her voice trembling, filled with despair. Mom, I need to talk to you urgently. Good morning, daughter. How was your trip to Asia? I asked coldly. Mom, I don't have time for this right now. I received a strange letter. It says I have to leave my apartment in 30 days. This has to be a mistake, an eviction notice? How weird. From whom? From a company I've never heard of. Wait, I have the paper here. Enrique Investimentos S/A. Do you know it? I almost smiled. Enrique had used his own name for the company. A poetic detail. No, daughter, I've never heard of it. Are you sure it's true? That's what I want to find out. Mom, I'm terrified. I don't know what to do. I need your help, and Mauricio? I asked, with false innocence. On the other side, a contained sob. He left me, Mom. He stayed in Europe with another woman. I have no one else. There it was, confirmation. Mauricio had fled, just as I'd imagined he would when the money ran out. Veronica, who had discarded me for him, was now alone. Where are you now? I asked. At the apartment. But I don't know for how long. Can I come over? I need to talk to someone. The irony was perfect. After kicking me out, he now came knocking on my door, begging for refuge. Of course, daughter. Come whenever you want, I'm going now. I hung up and went to the mirror. I needed to look perfect for the scene. I tied my hair in a simple bun, put on my most understated gray dress, and practiced my expression of a worried but resigned mother. When Veronica arrived, she would see exactly what she expected to find: a poor, frail widow, abandoned by her own daughter. Veronica arrived about an hour later. When I opened the door, I was startled by her appearance. She was thin, with deep circles under her eyes, and her expensive clothes looked wrinkled and lifeless. Her red eyes betrayed nights of crying, "Mom." He murmured, as if he were going to hug me, but stopped mid-gesture, remembering how he had treated me. "Come in, daughter. Would you like some coffee?" "Yes, please." We sat in the kitchen, at the same table where weeks before I had spread out Enrique's documents. Veronica looked small in the chair, like when she was a child and would come tell me about problems at school. "Mom, I'm so sorry for the way I left. I know I was cruel to you." "It's okay, daughter." "No, it's not. I treated you badly, I said horrible things. And now." Her voice broke. "Now I have no one left." "What happened to Mauricio?" I asked, keeping my tone calm. "He ran off with a waitress in Paris. A girl in her early 20s. I discovered there was never any deal in Asia. It was all a fabrication. He just wanted to escape his debts. He used the money from the sale of his house to finance his scam, and the debts." I insisted, "They're huge. Much bigger than I imagined." I discovered he'd been taking out loans for years. Some even used my name, without my knowledge." She began to cry, genuine tears of despair. For a moment, I almost comforted her. But then I remembered the coldness in her voice when she'd thrown me out of my own life. "And what are you going to do now?" I asked. "I don't know. I thought maybe I could stay here. Just for a while, until I can get back on my feet." That was the cue I was waiting for. "Of course, daughter. This will always be your home." She looked at me in surprise, as if she hadn't expected it to be so easy. "Seriously, Mom? After everything, you're my daughter, Veronica. That never changes." This time, she hugged me. Not with affection, but with desperation, like someone clinging to the last plank before sinking. I hugged her back, but inside me there wasn't just tenderness. There was calculation. Strategy. That afternoon, Veronica returned to her old apartment just to pick up some clothes and a few other items. When she returned, I installed her in her childhood bedroom. I watched as she put the clothes away in the closet with heavy, almost humiliated movements. From a life of luxury, she had descended to the simple bedroom of her mother's house. I stood in the kitchen, reflecting. Everything had happened as I'd predicted. Veronica had come to me broken, desperate, with no alternatives. And the best part was, she didn't suspect a thing. To her, I remained the poor, vulnerable widow, abandoned by her own daughter. That night, when silence filled the house, I called Jonas. "Jonas, I need one more favor. Tell me, Mrs. Margarita. I want you to list all of Mauricio's debts. I need exact numbers. The names of creditors, every detail. It will be delicate work, but feasible. Do it discreetly. And remember, no one can know I'm involved." "Understood. But may I ask, what is the ultimate goal?" I took a deep breath before answering. "My plan is simple. I will save my daughter. But first, she needs to understand what it means to hit rock bottom, I hung up the phone and poured myself a glass of wine Enrique had saved for special occasions. It had been a long time since I'd toasted anything. That night, however, marked the beginning of the second phase of my game. Veronica believed she had found refuge in my home. Little did she know that, right there, she would begin to learn the difference between poverty of choice and poverty of consequence. The next day, while packing her things, Veronica appeared in the kitchen with an envelope in her hand. "Mom, I found this among Mauricio's belongings. It has your name written on it." My heart raced, but I controlled my face. "My name?" Let me see. It was, indeed, Enrique's handwriting, but different from the first envelope I'd opened. This one was smaller, more recent. Maybe Mauricio found it among Dad's papers when he died, and never gave it to me, said Veronica. "Maybe," I replied, as if I didn't care. "Let's open it." Inside was a short letter and a small key. "Margarita, if you're reading this after the main envelope, it's because our daughter is in trouble. This key opens safe deposit box number 42 at the Central Bank, downtown branch. There's something there that can help you. Use it wisely. With eternal love, Enrique." Veronica read over my shoulder, her eyes shining. "A safe?" Dad had a safe, he never mentioned it to me. I lied. "We need to see what's in there, Mom." "Maybe documents, maybe something of value." The desperation in her voice was palpable. She clung to any hope. "Maybe it's best to leave it as it is," I suggested. "No, Mom. This could be our chance." I sighed, feigning hesitation. "Okay. Tomorrow we'll go together." That night, we had dinner for the first time in months, just the two of us. Veronica offered to cook, as if to be helpful. But the food tasted of guilt and fear. Between bites, she explained more about Mauricio's deception. There was no deal, no future, only debts hidden in fake contracts. As I listened to her, I realized that, for the first time, the world she had helped build was crumbling around her. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, we walked together to the Central Bank. Veronica was nervous, but also anxious, as if that key were her salvation. I knew deep down that none of that would change the essence of the lesson, but I maintained the calm expression of an unsuspecting widow. The clerk confirmed my documents and led us to the safe deposit boxes. I turned the key with steady hands, and the heavy metal swung open. Inside was a dark velvet box and some envelopes. I opened them slowly. Sparkles leaped before us. There were jewels. Lots of them. Studded rings, pearl necklaces, gold bracelets, earrings with rare stones. Some I recognized from old heirlooms of Enrique's family. Others were new to me, kept secret. There was also a letter detailing the origin and approximate value of each piece. Veronica almost lost her breath. "Mom, this is a treasure. Look at this sapphire necklace. And these emeralds. It must be worth millions." "Maybe," I replied, restrained. "Daddy kept all this hidden away," she said, running her fingers over the pieces as if they were lottery tickets. According to the letter, the entire set was worth a little over $1 million. To me, who already knew about the larger fortune, it was just a detail. But to Veronica, It seemed like the only lifeline. What are we going to do, Mom? She asked anxiously. These jewels are part of our history. It would be wise to keep them, but we need to sell them. With this money, you can restore the country house, and I can pay off part of Mauricio's debts. I sighed. There was old Veronica again, turning memories into figures, trying to erase mistakes with someone else's light. Are you sure you want to use your father's inheritance for this? I asked firmly. What choice do I have? If I don't pay soon, they'll destroy me. We took the box home. Veronica spread the jewelry out on the kitchen table and began calculating values, choosing which to sell and which to keep. I watched her silently, knowing that each piece sold would be another lesson engraved on my flesh. That afternoon, the phone rang. It was Jonas. Dona Margarita, I have the complete report on Mauricio's debts. The situation is even more serious than we thought. How much exactly? I asked. He owes over $1.5 million. He owes them to banks, financial institutions, and even private creditors. What's worse is that he forged your daughter's signature on several contracts. Legally, this makes her responsible. My heart sank. Is there a way out? If we can prove fraud, we can get her off the hook for much of it. But it will be a long and costly process. How costly? At least $250,000 in specialized lawyer fees, with no guarantee of victory. What if the debts are simply paid off? It would be resolved quickly. But, of course, your daughter can't afford that amount. I hesitated for a moment, but I already knew the answer. Jonas, prepare all the necessary documentation to free Veronica from this trap. But keep it absolutely confidential. She can't know I'm behind it. He was silent for a few seconds. Are you going to pay? Then, I'll do whatever it takes. But in my own way. When I hung up, I found Veronica sitting in the living room, staring at the jewelry scattered on the table. Her look was one of pure sadness. What are you thinking, daughter? I asked. About Dad. About how disappointed he would be if he saw what I'd done with my life. I abandoned you for a man who only deceived me. I sold our memories as if they were nothing. I ruined everything. It was the first time his voice carried true regret. Not the selfish lament of someone who has lost comfort, but the awareness of someone who has realized the harm he has caused. People make mistakes, Veronica. What matters is what we do after they happen. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. And how do I fix it, Mom? I smiled slightly, but silently I thought it's not time to reveal yet. In the following days, Veronica summoned courage and sold some of her jewelry. She kept only 2 pieces, the engagement ring Enrique had given me and a small necklace from her grandmother. The rest turned into cash, counted bills, which she spread out on the kitchen table with a mixture of relief and despair. I managed to sell it. Mom. It's less than I expected, but enough to pay off the most pressing debts. Are you sure this is what you want? I asked. I have no choice. If I don't pay something soon, they could seize everything. Even this house could be at risk. The irony gnawed at me. She feared losing a home that had always been mine, trying to cover debts owed to a man who had abandoned her, using the value of jewelry saved by the same Enrique who had silently made us rich. And how did you decide which debts to pay off first? I spoke with a bank consultant. She said to prioritize those with real estate collateral, because they're the ones that can generate immediate seizure. I noticed something different about her. The same daughter who once sold my house without consulting me now analyzed every step carefully, with trepidation. Suffering was beginning to teach her responsibility. That night, while she was organizing receipts and paperwork, Jonas called me again. Mrs. Margarita, we have news about Mauricio. We've located his whereabouts in Paris. He's trying to get married undercover to obtain residency. Furthermore, we found evidence that he forged documents with your daughter's signature. This is crucial. We'll be able to prove fraud and absolve you of your debts. My heart grew still. Veronica's deliverance was near. Start the legal process, Jonas. But don't say anything to her until everything is finalized. Understood. This will take about 3 weeks. Perfect. I hung up. From the living room, Veronica looked at me curiously. Who was it, Mother? Just someone asking about the neighbor on the corner. Wrong call, I replied matter-of-factly. Lying was no longer a problem for me. Every day, I felt more comfortable in this double life. The poor, abandoned mother Veronica saw, and the rich woman who, in secret, guided her redemption. The next 2 weeks were a test for Veronica. She faced tasks she had never even imagined, stretching her money to buy food, negotiating with persistent creditors, navigating job interviews amid lawsuits and debt. It was a tough education, but inevitable. One afternoon, she came home exhausted, her feet swollen, her expression haggard. Mom, I had 3 interviews today. 2 of them said they couldn't hire me because of the lawsuits. The 3rd time, they offered me a part-time job cleaning an office at night. Will you accept? I asked, noticing the weariness in his eyes. I have no choice. The pay is low, but it's better than nothing. And I can work nights so I can continue looking for something better during the day. Veronica, who had lived comfortably for over 40 years, was now preparing to clean offices. The contrast tightened my chest, but at the same time filled me with a strange pride. For the first time, she was facing reality without waiting for someone else to solve everything for her. Are you sure you can handle the physical exertion? I asked. I'll have to learn. I can't continue to be a burden to you, Mother. It's enough that you shelter me here without charging anything. I looked at her tenderly, but without revealing the secret. To Veronica, I remained the frail, impoverished widow. Only I knew I owned entire buildings, with resources that could solve all her problems in seconds. That same evening, my neighbor, Elsa, came to visit. We sat in the kitchen with a steaming pot of tea, and she stared longingly at the family photos on the wall. Margarita, I need to ask you something. Did you know Veronica would return in this condition? What do you mean? I replied, feigning surprise. When she left, she seemed proud and confident. Now she's returned broken and humble. It's as if she's learned a hard lesson. I took a deep breath. Elsa always saw beyond what was on the surface. Life takes many turns, my friend. Sometimes, it's these turns that teach you the value of things that once seemed guaranteed. She looked at me in a way that seemed to penetrate my defenses. Perhaps she suspected something, but she didn't say anything. The next night, Veronica left for her first shift as a cleaner. When she returned in the early hours, tired but still awake, there was a different light in her eyes. "How was it?" I asked, serving him some hot tea. "Difficult, but not as terrible as I imagined. The other women helped me. One of them, Donna Maria, is 60 years old and has been doing this for 2 decades. She showed me how to clean faster, how to save movement. She seems like a wise woman." "Yes, it is." She said she started working when her husband left her with 3 young children. He said the job was never his dream, but it gave him independence and dignity. Veronica paused, her eyes welling up. She told me something I'll never forget. "There are 2 types of people who end up here. Those who never had a chance, and those who wasted every chance they got. Think carefully about which group you belong to." "And what did you say?" I asked, trying to contain the tightness in my chest. He said I had every opportunity, a stable family, an inheritance, a home. And I threw it all away chasing a man who was worthless. And what did she say? He laughed with quiet wisdom and replied, "Then, my daughter, you're a step ahead of most. At least you know why you're here." Veronica drank the last drop of tea in silence. I watched her. She was no longer the same arrogant daughter who had once dismissed me with a phone call. There was a hint of humility in her, a new flame of understanding. A few days later, while we were having dinner together on the porch, Veronica suddenly put down her fork and looked at me seriously. "Mom, I need to tell you something. These last few days have been the hardest of my life. But also the most important." "Why?" I asked, feigning surprise, though I could already see the change in his gaze. "Because I finally understood what really matters. It's not money, nor living in a luxurious apartment, nor impressing others. What truly matters is having people who love you and stick by your side when everything falls apart." She took a deep breath, her voice breaking. "You have every right to hate me for what I did. I abandoned you when you needed me most. I took everything Daddy left you. I treated you like you were disposable. And now I'm here, asking for forgiveness and shelter." I held his hand. "I have already forgiven you, daughter." She shook her head, crying, "But I still can't forgive myself. Not until I prove that I've truly changed, that I've learned from my mistakes." In that moment, I saw in her eyes not just regret for the consequences, but true remorse for her choices. The cold, selfish Veronica seemed to be long gone. Here was a woman rebuilding. The next morning, the phone rang early. It was Jonas. "Mrs. Margarita, I have excellent news. The case is almost complete. With the evidence of fraud, we can absolve your daughter of all the debts left by Mauricio." I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. The moment I'd been waiting for had arrived. "Excellent, Jonas. Arrange a meeting in your office." It's time my daughter knew the truth. When I hung up, Veronica was in the living room, sorting papers. "Who was it, Mom?" he asked suspiciously. "Just a call to take care of some matters. Actually, I've scheduled a meeting with a lawyer who can help you." "Mom, I don't have money for a lawyer. I can barely pay my basic bills." "Don't worry, daughter. Let's just hear what he has to say. 2 days later, we went to Jonas's office. The old building, with its marble floors and tall windows, seemed intimidating to Veronica. She nervously fixed her hair, as if expecting more bad news. Jonas welcomed us with a restrained smile. Dona Margarita, Miss Veronica, thank you for coming. Veronica stepped forward. First of all, I need to let you know that I cannot afford to pay expensive fees. Jonas exchanged a look with me before answering. That's exactly what we're going to talk about. He handed her a thick folder. Veronica opened it, her eyes darting over the pages. Gradually, her expression changed from confusion to surprise. It says here that my signature was forged. That there is evidence that I was the victim of fraud. Does that mean I am not responsible for the debts? Exactly, Jonas confirmed. We've been investigating the case for the past few weeks. You're innocent. Veronica was silent, the paper trembling in her hands. But who paid for this investigation? I don't have a penny for it. Jonas looked at me, silent. The moment of revelation was about to happen. Veronica looked up, confused, searching me for an answer. I took a deep breath. It was time to end my role as a poor widow. Daughter, there's something I need to tell you. My voice sounded firmer than I expected. What, Mom? He asked, tears already welling up. I signaled to Jonas. He picked up another, even bulkier folder and handed it to her. Veronica opened it slowly. Her eyes widened as she saw deeds, bank statements, and company contracts. I don't understand, he stammered. This says you own property, have accounts with money. Is it all true? I nodded calmly. Your father didn't just leave memories, daughter. Enrique invested our savings for decades in silence. He wanted to protect me from worries and hide his fortune from you, so it would never be driven solely by money. Veronica put her hand to her mouth, as if trying to contain a scream. Does that mean that when I sold the beach house, it was still yours? Yes. I've already recovered it. And the building where I lived with Mauricio? It's mine too. It always has been. She left the documents on the table, her face pale, her body trembling. Mom. Since when did you know about all this? Since the day you called me from the office, saying you had sold my things, and yet you let me come back ruined, crying every night, believing you had nothing? Yes. The silence that fell was heavy. Veronica stared at me with teary eyes, unable to fully comprehend. But why? He whispered, almost voiceless, because I needed to learn, daughter. The value of things. The weight of responsibility. And, above all, the meaning of family. The tears finally overflowed. They were no longer of despair, but of understanding. Veronica wiped her tears with the back of her hand, but couldn't speak right away. She just stared at me, as if trying to put together the pieces of a puzzle she'd previously thought impossible. I left you when you needed me most, he finally murmured, his voice breaking. I sold your memories, treated you like a nuisance. And yet, you saved me. I did, but not in the way you imagined, I replied softly. I didn't give you money so you could keep making the same mistakes. I let you learn from the weight of your choices. She fell silent, absorbing every word. The silence was broken by Jonas, who spoke gently. Miss Veronica, your mother covered all the legal costs. You are free from Mauricio's debts. We have also recovered the illegally sold goods. Veronica's eyes widened in disbelief. I don't need to work as a cleaner anymore, not if you don't want to, I replied. But I hope you won't give up so quickly. She looked at me, surprised. Why? Because that job taught you something no fortune can buy, the value of your own effort. The dignity of achieving things with your own hands. Veronica took a deep breath, tears still streaming, but now with a different expression. It was no longer despair. It was respect. A respect I hadn't seen in her eyes for many years. Have you forgiven me yet, Mother? He asked, almost in a whisper. A long time ago, daughter. The question is, can you forgive yourself? She lowered her head, sobbing softly. I don't know. I did unforgivable things. I placed my hand over hers. We all make mistakes, Veronica. What defines us is not the mistake, but what we do after it. Ona's left us alone in the office, discreetly closing the door. It was just the two of us, sitting face to face, in silence. The weight of everything that had been said still hung between us. Veronica took a deep breath, trying to compose herself. Mom, I want you to know something. Even if you had nothing, even if you really were the poor widow I thought you were, I would have learned the same lesson. What lesson, daughter? I asked, looking her in the eyes. That there is no greater treasure than having someone who loves you unconditionally. During these weeks, the only certainty that kept me going was knowing that, despite everything, I still had a home with you. My heart warmed at his words, but I remained calm. That will never change, Veronica. You will always have my home, my lap, my love. She squeezed my hands tightly, as if clinging to that truth. But now I know I can't take this for granted. I need to earn it every day. With respect, with gratitude, with actions, not just with words. We walked out of Jonas's office together. Side by side. We were no longer just mother and daughter bound by blood and bonds. We were two women who had found each other again through mutual respect. After weathering the most painful storm, at that moment, I felt that a new cycle was beginning. The following weeks were spent rebuilding. Veronica knew she could quit her night job now that she was debt-free and aware of her inheritance. But she surprised me one afternoon, as she was packing her bag to leave. Mom, I decided to continue cleaning. I looked at her, intrigued. But, daughter, there's no need anymore. You don't need to wear yourself out like this. She took a deep breath, her eyes firmly fixed. It's not a punishment. Mom. It's a reminder. I need to finish what I started. I need to feel the weight of effort and the dignity it brings. I don't want to go back to a comfortable life as if nothing ever happened. I remained silent for a few seconds, watching her put on her simple uniform. There was something different in her manner, a new posture, more upright, more confident. She was no longer the broken daughter who had returned with suitcases in hand. She was a woman seeking to rebuild herself with honesty. Are you sure this is what you want? I asked softly. Absolutely. I need to prove to myself that I'm not the same Veronica as before. I smiled with quiet pride. Perhaps, finally, my daughter had understood the true value of what Enrique and I had always tried to teach her. A few days later, Elsa came to visit me late one afternoon. She brought a still warm cake, as she always did when she wanted to talk. We sat in the kitchen, the tea steaming between us, as she looked at the family photos hanging on the wall. "Margarita, I have something to confess," he said softly. "At first, I thought you were too harsh with Veronica." I looked down at the cup, stirring the tea slowly. "And what do you think now, Elsa?" she sighed, looking towards the living room, where my daughter was studying silently. "Now I think you were the wisest mother I ever knew. Look at her, she's no longer the same woman who left for Europe full of arrogance. This Veronica is different. She has humility, serenity, even a new dignity." A lump formed in my throat. Elsa had always known how to observe more than she said. "Life sometimes teaches us in harsh ways," I replied, measuring my words. She stared at me. "Maybe. But I know that without you, Margarita, she wouldn't have been able to learn. And I'll say more. Not every mother would have the courage to let her go through what she went through." I felt a pang in my chest. Elsa didn't know the whole truth, but she still seemed to grasp the essence of my choice. "Do you think I'm doing the right thing?" I asked. Almost in a whisper, "I think she's doing what a real mother would do, not just saving, but teaching." I smiled, moved. Maybe, deep down, I needed to hear that too. That night, Veronica came home from work visibly tired, but with something different in her eyes. She sat at the table, took off her shoes, and asked for a glass of water. "How was today?" I asked. She let out a long sigh. "Difficult, but I learned a lot from Donna Maria." "What happened?" We talked during the break. She told me that there are two types of people who end up in this job: those who never had the opportunity, and those who wasted all the opportunities they got. There was silence. She stared at the tabletop, her fingers intertwined. Before continuing, I told her I belonged to the second group. That I had everything: a stable family, a home full of memories, even an inheritance, and I threw it away chasing Mauricio. My heart sank. Before I could speak, she added, "And do you know what Donna Maria replied?" "That, at least, I recognize that. That I'm already one step ahead of most because I understand why I'm here." Tears streamed down her face, silently. But they weren't tears of despair, but of clarity. "Mom," he murmured, "I've wasted every opportunity you've given me. But I swear I'll never again live without recognizing the value of what I have." I looked at her silently, feeling like the lesson had finally begun to take root. A few days later, the phone rang in the early afternoon. It was Jonas. His voice carried an unusual seriousness. "Mrs. Margarita, we have important news about Mauricio." I sat up straight in my chair, my heart racing. "Tell me, Jonas." "We located him in Paris. He's trying to obtain residency through a sham marriage with a young foreign woman. But most importantly, we found evidence that he intentionally forged his daughter's signature on several loan agreements." I closed my eyes for a moment. It was the confirmation I needed. Does this mean Veronica can be absolved of all debts? Yes. With this evidence, we can prove fraud and coercion. Your daughter will be released from any legal liability. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Then start the process immediately, Jonas. But please don't tell her yet. I want you to know only when everything is complete, understood? It will take about 3 weeks, perfect. When I hung up, I found Veronica in the living room, staring absently at the jewelry we still had. Her eyes were distant, filled with melancholy. She looked up and asked, "Who was it, Mother?" Smile naturally. "A neighbor who called the wrong number." Nothing important, she accepted the answer without hesitation. Little did she know that the freedom she so desired was already being crafted behind the scenes. The following weeks were tough for Veronica. Her jewelry money was running out, and every purchase at the market was carefully considered. I saw her doing the math, writing down prices, something unthinkable just months ago. One night she came home exhausted, threw her bag on the couch, and collapsed into the kitchen chair. "Mom, I had 3 job interviews today, and how was it?" I asked. She laughed humorlessly. 2 times, they said they couldn't hire me because of the lawsuits filed against me. The 3rd time, they offered me a part-time position as a night cleaner. The pay is small, but it's what they have. I stared at her in silence. The daughter who had once believed everything was hers now accepted office cleaning duties to survive. There was pain in that transformation, but also something noble. "And you'll accept?" I asked. "I will. It's not what I dreamed of for myself, but I have no other choice. Better to earn little than to go on empty-handed." As he spoke, I noticed a different firmness in his tone. It was no longer just desperation. It was determination. That morning, when she left for her first shift, I stood alone in the kitchen, staring at the simple uniform she'd brought with her. I smiled with both bitterness and hope. Suffering was shaping my daughter in a way no fortune could. The next morning, Veronica returned from her first cleaning shift. Her slumped shoulders betrayed her fatigue, but there was a different spark in her eyes. She sat at the table, ordered coffee, and remained silent for a few seconds before speaking. "Mom, it was a drag. My body hurts in places I didn't even know existed." She laughed softly, but soon became serious. "But I learned a lot yesterday." "With whom?" I asked, pouring him a cup. "With Donna Maria." Veronica sighed. "She's 60 years old, she's been working at this for 20 years. She said it's not anyone's dream job, but it gave her independence and dignity after her husband abandoned her." I lowered my eyes, listening carefully. "You know what she told me, Mom? That there are 2 types of people who end up in that job, those who never had opportunities, and those who wasted all the ones they got." Veronica stopped, as if the weight of the sentence still echoed inside her. "And what did you answer?" I asked cautiously. She pressed her lips together, her eyes welling up. I replied that I belonged to the second group. That I had everything: family, house, inheritance. And I threw it away following Mauricio. My chest tightened. Before I could say anything, she added, "Do you know what Donna Maria replied?" "So, my daughter, you're already one step ahead of most, because at least you know why you're here." Tears streamed down her face, but they weren't tears of self-pity. They were tears of clarity. "Mom, I wasted every opportunity you gave me. But I swear I'll never again live without recognizing the value of what I have. I looked at her in silence, feeling that the transformation was finally taking root in her soul. A few days later, the phone rang early. I recognized Jonas's voice on the other end. "Mrs. Margarita, I have good news. We've completed the process. With the proof of forgery, your daughter is legally free of all of Mauricio's debts." I closed my eyes, letting relief wash over me for a moment. "So, is everything resolved?" "Yes. There is no longer any risk of collection or seizure. Your daughter no longer owes anything." I looked at the closed door of Veronica's room, where she was still sleeping. Exhausted from the night's work, "Jonas, don't tell her anything yet." He hesitated. "Are you sure?" "It could give her immediate relief, I know. But I don't want to get my hopes up too soon. I need her to finish this learning process, understood?" "I will keep everything confidential until your authorization." I thanked him and hung up.